After listening to all these miracles that we are living or we are going through, this miracle of being able to meditate in our houses for 2 hours each day, that's a miracle as well. Yeah, yeah. We are telling our friends, no, I'm very busy, I'm very busy. And we are beyond the beyond. So doing nothing, just receiving this enormous quantity of love that the universe is sending to us. So I ask myself, is the divinity trying to say us to the humanity why we need to die? What immortality means? We are in front a new discovering, a new race, something that the divine is trying to tell us about why we need to die. So many incarnations, causal bodies, so. Why? Maybe it's the end of that.
How sweet. Now look, point number one. I'm not the type of guy who sits in my house meditating 24 hours a day and expect things to come to me. I'm a pragmatist. I'm a practical person. I'm going to take value in information, I'm going to apply it and see if I can gain more value from it. So the message is not to sit and meditate and just receive universal love and do nothing else. Because my message is to not disengage in life, but to fully engage in life. That's my message. So,
no, I work a lot also.
But I was clarifying it for everybody, okay? Not you. No, I know that. Nobody does that in this room, I don't think. But I want the theory of immortality to be a thought that we think about. From a theoretical standpoint, immortality is possible because you have immortality genes. So cancer cells, a lot of them are immortal in that sense because they produce telomere ACE, which is the chemical that lengthens telomeres. And so when we understand that 98.5% of our DNA is unused, and that it's a parts list, it's a library of possibilities. The combinations and sequences are endless. And I think that in those codes are codes for longer lives. I think there are codes for immortality. I think there's several codes, but those codes will not be activated because of chemistry. Like, neurotransmitters signal neuropeptides, neuropeptides signal hormones and signal the gene. It's not going to work like that. I don't think that those gene sequences will be activated by chemistry. I think they'll be activated by frequency. And the receptor sites on the cells are just 100 to 200 times more sensitive to frequency than they are to chemistry. So when the cell's getting a higher frequency and those microtubules are vibrating, the cell then can begin to signal new genes. You can receive information, but it's electromagnetic. I think that from that theoretical standpoint, that our lives can be lengthened. I also think that if you're truly living in the present moment, 100%, from a theoretical standpoint, you can't age either. You're in the present moment. And so I came across these books many years ago called The Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. And when I read those books, it was a researcher, American or British researcher, that went to the Himalayas in the 20s or turn of the century, the 1900s. He studied the masters in the Himalayas. And these guys and women caused my imagination to go wild, and they just never aged. And the researchers had documented all kinds of amazing things that they did. And their message the entire time was, anybody can do this. You just have to have the proper training. So, from a theoretical standpoint, without sounding too fanatical, I do think that first, life extension is absolutely possible. The problem with life extension, if it's done just in the conventional model right now, is that right now, the body is starting to outlive the brain, which is a big problem. That's why there's so much dementia. Our lifespan has increased dramatically in the last 20 years. So I'm talking about not just prolonging the body's life, I'm talking about the person truly changing. So we did an experiment where we gathered 35 people, and I asked them if they were willing to do that work for 5 to 7 days every week. And the telomeres that we lengthened, I talked about this on Monday night, 74% of those people, changing nothing about their lifestyle, but just changing the way they thought, the choices they made, the things they did, the experiences they had, and the emotions that they were regulating. That in 60 days, 74% of them lengthened their telomeres, which means they're lengthening their life. So I think if we get really good at it, and I'm going to continue doing the telomere measurements because I'm fascinated by it, I do think that the better we get at this, I think the more we can extend our life just by changing our energy, just by continuously doing the work, just by being initiated. You can't theoretically say, I'm going to live for 200 years, and yet you're afraid of heights. Because you can't have that fear. You would have to take care of that from a theoretical standpoint. So, I love the conversation. I think about it all the time. But you have to get really good first at when you start changing certain things in your life, when you start getting really good at having a mystical experience, you ask the next question, you ask the next question, you evolve your understanding by continuously reaching a little further. You just don't go from A to Q without going through those methodical steps. And I'm a pragmatist, and I think what we're doing is methodical, and I do very carefully go slow enough that I can keep everybody moving as a group or hit it as many ways as I can. I mean, when I was talking about space, people were hating me. Like, what is the space thing? Nose in space, my head in space, the space around my head. We got thousands of hate letters. Like, I just skip in the space stuff. It's a pain in the ass. I'm just going to do the work. But now, look, I'm standing on the stage this morning looking at all of you, and you're unfolding into space like it's totally normal. But we had to go methodical to get there. Now that you can get beyond yourself, the next step is to believe that this field is absolutely real. It is the aliveness of life. It is the divine, and if the divine is the very energy that connects all of life, when you fall in love with life, you fall in love with the divine. And people got to start making those connections. And then they have to have that experience. And then when they have that experience, we keep evolving our understanding. So it's a methodical process, but it's not something that I don't think about.
A good mantra will be, keep going, keep going, keep going.
I love it.